Hello, welcome everyone. We just wanted to let you know you're in the right place for Teen Triple Threat Top Risk for Young Drivers with Daniel Armbruster and Operation Parent. We're so happy that you've joined us, and we're loading everyone in right now. So hopefully you have a beautiful afternoon where you are, as we do here in Louisville, Kentucky. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We are so happy to get started today. You are here for the Teen Triple Threat Top Risk for Young Drivers with Daniel Armbruster from AAA out of Texas and New Mexico and Operation Parent. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to be with us today. We want to tell you about our upcoming webinars. We've got a rebroadcast coming up on May the 5th. And we also, there we go. We have a rebroadcast coming up on May the 5th. Sexual abuse, not my child, not my family. This is with Joe Carlton. We wanted to let you know this is a rebroadcast, so you won't be able to ask the professional questions, but it's a great presentation with really important material. So feel free to join us for that one if you haven't had an opportunity to see it. And then we have another live webinar coming up in May. This one is titled, How Are Children Being Trafficked Without Us Noticing? It's with Kara Starnes from here in Louisville, Kentucky, who's the founder and president of Safe Passage, Kentucky. We invite you to register in advance, and for those of you that are with us here today, that registration is live and on our website if you wanted to take a couple of minutes to register for our next presentation while you're here with us. Operation Parent's mission is to love and support parents by providing real-world information, connection, and most importantly, hope. I'm going to take you through a couple of the technical features so that you can participate during today's webinar. You'll see an orange grab tab at the top of your screen. If you wish to minimize that panel, just click on the tab. But for now, open it up and check out the features with me. There's a question feature about halfway down the control panel. You're going to see this section, the third section there. You're going to send both questions and comments in that location. It's a light blue panel where you can type your questions and they're going to be sent directly and privately to us. All questions will be answered at the end of this presentation if we can. We will do our best to get to as many as possible. Please know that we might go just a little bit over the 60-minute mark with the question and answer segment. So we understand if you're not able to stay through the entire presentation. It is being recorded and it will be sent to you tomorrow afternoon. We've got some awesome handouts for you today. Like always, most of them are provided from AAA. There's a AAA teen driver report card. So if you want to check in with your teens and have them rate, you're brave enough to have them rate your driving, that's a great resource for you. There's a Texas Teen Parent Driving Agreement so that you can start to use that to form conversations around safety and driving. There's a Start Smart, that is the mouthful, Teen Driving Agreement as well. And another version of that, Start Smart, that has checkpoints and as well as consequences. So the reason these are very similar in nature, but we provided you with 3 different documents so that as you're having conversations or if you decide to do a contract with your teen as you're working on driving, practicing, these will help you either sit down and go over the contract together or just have ongoing conversations about your expectations and safety. The one thing I like about that checkpoint sheet is that it takes you through the consequences that you can talk ahead to your teen about what happens if they do receive a speeding ticket. What is the consequence going to be for that? What happens if you learn that passengers are in the car with them and not wearing seat belts, or if they're not being truthful about where they're headed in the car, or very scary, using alcohol or drugs while driving. And so you're having these conversations in advance of giving them the privilege of driving. And so we wanted to provide 3 different handouts so that as you're framing up for these conversations, you have a lot of ideas and things to think about. As we're getting started here today, I want to thank Emma Dugas from MAD for connecting us with Daniel Armbruster. He's a great guy who's put a ton of work into this presentation, and he'll be launching you into helping your teen drive and hopefully making it a little less nerve-wracking. My teen just received her permit last Wednesday, so I'm in the middle of this nerve-wracking experience, and Daniel has already helped me get my head around it. He has a personal family connection to a driving accident where a family member was injured in a teen driving incident. He also has just a ton of knowledge about what is actually happening on the highway and what our teens are doing on the highway. So we could not be more thankful to have you here with us today, and we're excited to learn some new things.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and it's such an honor to be here with all of you today. My name is Daniel Armbruster, as Michelle said, and I'm with AAA Texas, based in the DFW area, but of course I also cover, as Michelle mentioned, New Mexico as well. I'm very passionate about traffic safety, especially when it comes to younger drivers, because as Michelle said, I've been personally impacted by a crash that injured a very close cousin as I was growing up. My sister and I and my cousin, we all grew up, we were all similar in age in a small town here in Texas. And one night she, unbeknownst to her parents, snuck out with some older friends to try to, hang out with the cool kids. And what ended up happening was those older kids were drinking alcohol and were driving. And they were driving around back roads trying to have fun. And they missed a stop sign at a T intersection. And unfortunately, that was 21 years ago, this coming weekend. And it actually, since that time, she was 15 years old at the time. And when they crashed, they went through the intersection into a ditch and the vehicle rolled forward. She did not have a seatbelt on and suffered a brain injury that caused her to be in a vegetative state, which she is still in today. And also, I was a journalist for 17 years, so I covered numerous traffic safety topics, many of them here in Texas, as well as in Arkansas and Oklahoma. So I'm very familiar with traffic safety from that aspect and what we see on the highways, as well as I teach teen driving safety courses for AAA for Texas and New Mexico. And then also, in addition to our teen driving safety courses, I also am a certified child passenger safety technician, as well as a car fit technician to help older, mature drivers get fit in their vehicle and drive comfortably. So a little bit about AAA, if you're not familiar with us, we are the American Automobile Association, and we were founded in Chicago in 1902, started out as a small motor club, but we've grown into a federation of motor clubs across North America. Of course, we cover all 50 states now and Canada, but our history goes back a long way when it comes to traffic safety. You can see here on this timeline, AAA was involved in the first transcontinental highway, as well as the first roadside protection program, which of course is what we're still known for today, as well as the first pedestrian death studies, high school driver education programs. So traffic safety is a part of our culture. We're an advocate for motorists. We're a not-for-profit membership organization, and we offer many services to our members. That includes, of course, insurance for home, life, and auto, as well as our 24/7 emergency roadside service, travel services, discounts and rewards to more than 100,000 locations across North America, and financial services to help protect your identity. So that's what AAA is. We, again, the American Automobile Association and a federation of motor clubs. And as I said, we're very passionate about traffic safety. These are just some of the events from Texas that you see on your screen that when we're out in the community. The one down there in the bottom left is an event that we're very proud of. This was the Distracted Driving Walk to End Distracted Driving in Houston, Texas. And we had over 650 people turn out in the streets of Houston. And that's our goal. We can't wait to get back out, once everyone's vaccinated, to get back out on the streets to raise awareness about some key issues. But today, of course, we're here to talk about teen drivers. So I want to tell you a little bit about what our learning objectives are going to be today. And first off, we're going to talk about why teens crash. Obviously, these are novice drivers. They're new to driving. And so that is a big part of it, but we'll talk about some of those top risks, as well as graduated driver's licensing laws, what the GDL is, why it's implemented, why it's important, and why parents and teens should know about it. And of course, we're going to talk about your role as parents, why it's so important for you to be involved in the process as you're teaching your child how to drive or working with them on driving and developing that skill. And of course, we'll go through a summary as well as some take-home resources that you as a parent can work with and have those conversations with your teen, which we know they're nerve-wracking. We know this is a time when a lot of parents are nervous. As Michelle pointed out, her daughter just got her permit. So it's a very nerve-wracking time, but also we're going to give you some tools that hopefully give you a little bit of peace of mind and know how to navigate this process. So one of the first things we do when we teach our teen driving safety classes, this is also a handout for you in the handout section, but it's a driving report card. We actually have the teens grade their parents. They're usually in the class together. And why we do that is because as early, from a very early age, children, of course, are subconsciously picking up cues. They're picking up things that their parents do. You're a role model for them. And so as they get older, they're watching you drive. Even at the age of 3, 4, 5, they're picking up those little habits, what you do behind the wheel. And so if you speed, your child is more likely to speed. If you text and drive, your child is more likely to text and drive. And by the way, April is National Distracted Driving Awareness Month. So behind me, I have some banners that we use at our community traffic safety events. When we're out and about. Of course, right now we're still inside because of COVID, but these are used, of course, as part of that education campaign. But again, a really important tool, and that can be found in your handouts. All right, so up next we have why we're here. Well, motor vehicle crashes are the #1 cause of teen deaths in the United States. That is a big fact that many parents may not be aware of, but certainly you know that, of course, driving is a responsibility, not a right. And so that's why we're here. And in fact, in the US, if you were to take school buses, you would have to put 287,121 teens that are killed or injured each year in America. That would be more than 6,500 school buses of teens if you were to take school buses and load them with teens, just to represent how big of a problem that is in the United States. And of course, something that we're trying to tackle here at AAA. So when we look at crash rates by age and breakdown of age, we see that the ages 15 to 24 have the highest fatal and injury rates of any other age group when it comes to drivers. As I said, of course, a lot of that has to do with simply because they're young, novice drivers that don't have a lot of experience behind the wheel. That certainly experience is important. And we see, of course, on the bar graph there that the number goes down over time as you get more experience. So that plays a big part of it. It's not everything, but certainly that's a big part of it. Also, teens, of course, can feel invincible. And as we get older, we become more aware of mortality and things of that nature. So that also just plays a role in that as well. So let's talk about the top 5 reasons that teens crash. Inexperience, as we pointed out, also poor visual search habits. That's something you gain over time as you're behind the wheel, scanning the road in front of you and seeing what's in front of you. Speed management is very important. Space management is very important. And then distraction and attention, it's number 5, but it's going to be one of the most important topics we talk about today because 60% of all fatal crashes involving teen drivers are because of some form of distraction. Now you're thinking cell phones, and that's certainly a big one, but there's one that's even bigger than that. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. Also, statewide texting bans. There's a lot of, almost every state now in the United States has some form of a texting ban implemented towards teen drivers. I believe there's only 1 or 2 states left now that do not have some form of a ban. This is the Texas code. This basically means electronic, you cannot send an electronic message over your cell phone. And I want to point out that this is Texas. Motor laws are generally created at the state level. And so if I show you a law today, it's likely going to be Texas, where I'm based, but they vary by different states. So it's really important for you to know the laws in your state. And so if you go to AAA.com, there is a section on there where you can find the motor laws for your state. And it's a really great vehicle to use when you're trying to learn what the laws are when it comes to texting and driving towards teens and younger adults. And in fact, in Texas, this is for adults. If we go to the next slide, we'll see that in Texas, adults legally can still pick up their phone as long as they're not texting or sending an electronic message. But in Texas, they did make it to where if it's a person under the age of 21, they cannot have the phone in their hand at all. So that's the law here in Texas. I know we have folks from about 43 different states that were registered. So certainly, if you do need to find your state's law, you can go on AAA.com and look up the motor laws section. So let's talk about distracted driving. April is National Distracted Driving Awareness Month, as I said. 97% of drivers in this AAA Traffic Safety Culture Survey that we took just a few years ago, 97% of the respondents said that they do believe that texting and driving is very, very serious. It's a serious problem. But then again, more than half also in that same survey admitted to doing that very act. Sort of a say as I do, do as I say, not a, excuse me, don't do as I say, do as I do situation there. So certainly a problem that most of us are aware of, but not necessarily one that we really follow through with. So that was, I believe, from 2019, that traffic culture survey. So let's talk about distracted driving. As I said, distraction it can be anything that distracts you. That takes your eyes off the road, your hands off the wheel, or your mind off of driving. And some distractions do all three. A lot of times there's a myth out there that hands-free devices, talking on a hands-free device is safe to do when we're behind the wheel. Well, as you can see here on this graphic, that actually takes your brain away from driving. And so certainly if your brain is not focused on driving, even if you're talking, even if your hands are on the wheel, and even if you're looking at the road ahead of you, you may not see what's in front of you. We call that situational blindness because you're distracted. But it also, of course, can be your eyes off the road due to billboard signs. It can be due to personal grooming that we often see. Driving down the highway, there's a car going by, another driver, and you see them shaving or putting on makeup. That is a very dangerous act, but certainly is distracting as well. And then even talking with other passengers, that can be a distraction, especially for teen drivers. So one big question we have for you is, the next question is our poll question. We want to know, can you multitask? Because as I said, if it takes your brain off of driving, that is going to, of course, be a distraction, even if you're talking hands-free. So we have a poll question, multitasking, can you do it? And then the answers are your options. Yes, once I get used to doing the tasks, or no, no way. And I'm going to send it over to Nikki now. She's going to put the poll up and give you some more information.
All right, yeah, so I'm going to launch this poll real quick. I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to just kind of think about that. Let's see some answers coming in. It's great, just a couple more seconds. Thank you all for participating. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close up the poll. And it's close. It looks like we have about 44% of you all saying yes, once I get used to doing the task, and 56% saying no way. So Daniel, go ahead and explain more about that.
Okay, so yes, multitasking is actually a myth. We cannot multitask. The brain actually cannot do more than one function at a time. We can do switching between tasks really quickly. We can get used to that. but the brain actually cannot do, physically cannot do more than one task at a time. Your brain processing speed slows, it's harder to remember new material, and you can become stressed. And so when you're trying to do a function like driving, if you're trying to multitask, it's a form of distraction, and of course, you increase your risk for a crash. In fact, if you're driving distracted, let's say you're looking at reading a text message. We have a little graphic to show you here. If you're reading a text message and you're going down a football field at 55 miles an hour, you would be driving the length of a football field blindfolded. It takes the average 5 seconds to read a text message. So in that time, you'd go over 100 yards. And so, of course, if you're on the highway and you're going at 55 miles an hour, or, you know, in most cases here in Texas, we have speeds up to 80 miles per hour, speed limits. So that is extremely dangerous to think about, and what could go wrong in just those few seconds. And of course, that plays out every day, as we have on average 9 people in the US that die each day from distracted driving. More than 1,000 are injured, some permanently. And of course, distracted driving is actually believed to be very underreported, because a lot of times after crashes, the driver simply does not admit that they were distracted. So just a little something there, a tidbit fact for you. But we play a little game in our teen driving workshops here in Texas when it comes to multitasking, to prove to teens that they cannot multitask. And in fact, so here's how it works. The first time you have a deck of cards, playing cards, and you have your 4 suits, of course. Well, each teen has 1 set of playing cards, and then the teens will be given 45 seconds to separate those into the different suits, you know, clubs, spades, hearts, and diamonds. And then, of course, the second time around, you want to time that, and then the second time around, you reshuffle the cards, and then have your teen once again for 45 seconds. You have 45 seconds to separate cards into 4 suits, but this time, you're asking them math questions, and it doesn't have to be very hard math questions. It can be, what is 4 times 2, you know? So in that, they will not be able to, most of the time we see that they cannot finish out separating those cards the second time around. And so it's just kind of a little fun exercise to show, you know, when your brain cannot do more than one thing at a time. So you can't put the cards down into the suit and also try to do the math in your head, even if it's simple math. So a fun little exercise that we allow parents to do in our class with the teens. Here's the common teen distractions we see. I said cell phones make up a big part of that. You can see on this graphic, 12% using a cell phone, but 15% actually is interacting with 1 or more passengers. And that's why the GDL laws are one of the reasons why GDL laws are so important. And we'll get to that, because it limits the number of passengers in a vehicle in most states. Also though, looking at something in the vehicle, 9% looking at something outside of the vehicle. As we said, that could be a billboard, it could be a passerby if you see a crash. 8% singing and dancing. Grooming is also a problem, as well as reaching for objects. And that could be something as simple as reaching for the radio. That can be distracting too. So just some food for thought, you know, cell phones obviously are a big part of our education when we talk about distracted driving. But they're not the only thing that can be distracting. So very important to know that as well. And then, as I said, passengers are the top distraction we see in fatal teen crashes. So here's an example of what happens when you start adding in passengers who are young. At 16, 17 years old, the driver's risk of being killed in a crash dramatically increases every time you add another passenger in there. So let's say if that passenger is younger than 21, and that's really important too. So it increases by 44% carrying 1 passenger younger than 21. It doubles when carrying 2 passengers younger than 21, and then it quadruples, and it continues to go up, of course. So you know, it's really important. Your teen, of course, they're young, they want to show their friends their new car, you know, and all of that's great. But it's really important to understand as parents to try to minimize the number of passengers in the vehicle. And in many states, it's actually the law. So again, that's a really important thing you want to know is that the law when you're teaching your teen to drive? Well, the next thing we're going to show you is a video. And before we play it, I just want to kind of explain what this is. AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety did a study with LITEX, and they put technology in vehicles, including cameras. And what would happen is this was in more than 1,000 teenagers that the vehicles were in, and this was back in 2015. But what they did is this technology would activate based on if the teen slammed on the brakes or if it picked up any kind of jerky motion, things of that nature. And so astonishing, though, what the video actually captured inside the vehicles of these teens. You'll see some of them are playing on their phones. You'll see some of them are looking at the radio, but nonetheless, just take a look at the video and you'll see for yourself why this was such an impactful study about distracted driving.
My phone a long time ago. Oh! That was my phone.
So you see there in those videos, each of the teens were distracted in some form or fashion. It was passengers, it was on their phone, grooming, all of those things. And so kind of just a real eye opener, if you will, to see that. And of course, now we have the technology to look at that. And ironically, technology is a lot of times what is causing distractions. But nonetheless, a great study by the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, just showing that this is real, it happens, and it happens in just flash of a second. So one thing I do want to let you know, though, when it comes to distracted driving in your Operation Parent Handbook, if you go to pages 63 and 64, they discuss distracted driving in the handbook, and there is actually AAA data that is explained in that as well. So the 8th edition there, the teen driving continues to be an important topic, of course. So check that out in your Operation Parent Handbook. So let's talk about another threat. We talked about distractions. Now let's talk about impaired driving. Certainly, you know, many of us know that drunk driving is, of course, dangerous. It is deadly. But nonetheless, when it comes to teens, and of course, peer pressure plays a role in this, wanting to be with the cool kids, things of that nature, it's really alarming what we see. This is some results from a few different studies from NHTSA, as well as the National Institute of Drug Abuse. And what they saw was 66% of teens in high school who reported drinking and driving the past month also said that they binge drank defined as having 4 or more alcoholic drinks within a couple of hours. 14% of teens use marijuana daily. 1 in 5 teen drivers say that they drove under the influence of marijuana, which is extremely dangerous. And then 36% of them said that they do not believe marijuana affected their driving. There's different studies out there, but I will tell you that the most credible studies that we've seen here at AAA show that it dramatically can impact your driving, even more so than alcohol. And what a new study just came out from the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety last week that showed that drivers who consume, not just teen drivers, but drivers in general who consume marijuana before getting behind the wheel also are more likely to consume alcohol and, of course, perform different risky behaviors behind the wheel. So certainly it's an important conversation that parents need to have well before your child starts driving. But just kind of an inside look at where our country is when it comes to impairment amongst young people. So what we do know is that alcohol and marijuana, of course, impair your vision. It can cause you to feel drowsy, feeling overly confident, which of course leads to risk taking, difficulty maintaining attention, as well as slower reaction times and difficulty judging distances, meaning if you're at a stop sign and a vehicle's coming, it's harder to tell how far away that vehicle is and how fast they're going if you're under the influence of marijuana or alcohol. And a lot of situations now we see where both are in someone's system. And it's not just teen drivers, as I said, it's adults too, but certainly when you put this in combination with a driver who is very inexperienced, they're new to driving, the risk just compounds. So certainly some important conversations to do on that. So what we do know is that drivers under the influence of marijuana are 25% more likely to crash than those under the influence of alcohol, and twice as likely to crash with a driver of a BAC of 0.15. So when you saw in that survey that a lot of teens feel like that marijuana doesn't impair their driving, you can talk to your teen, show them this research. This was done by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's Drug and Alcohol Crash Risk Study. It wasn't a AAA study, it was the National Highway Safety Traffic Administration. So some states have zero tolerance laws when it comes to alcohol or driving under the influence. Here in Texas, this is the Texas law. And again, you can go to AAA.com's motor law section and look up your state's motor laws. But in Texas, what we have here is under the age of 21, a first-time conviction of DUI could cost up to $17,000 if you add up fees, fines, and penalties, and of course, attorney's fees as well. So your license is history. You can lose it for up to a year. You can go to jail 3 to 180 days. And of course, it's really important to point out to your teen, not only can you go to jail, not only can you lose your driver's license and your freedom there, but also it can follow you to college. It can follow you when you're trying to get a job. So it's really something that isn't just going to go away after visiting the court. And so I think that, when teens are trying to figure out and plan their future, it's important to point that out. And this isn't just we don't see these types of crashes in teens who are just bad kids or have bad grades. We see this in all families, all types of families, all different backgrounds. Just to point out, I mentioned at the beginning my personal situation and impact from that. My cousin, she was an all-state cheerleader. She was an athlete. She was a straight A student. So you can't really say, oh, well, my teen wouldn't do that because they have good grades, etc. So in Texas, we also have the 911 Lifeline law, and many states do have this. I know Kentucky has a similar law as well. If you're underage and you suspect an underage friend has alcohol poisoning, you can call 911 for help, and you're protected under the law and won't be charged by police for consuming alcohol under the age of 21. So we say, don't just let your friends sleep it off. You could save a life. And alcohol poisoning, of course, we see a lot of times in young high schoolers as well as college age students. Now, the other topic we're going to talk about, we talked about impairment, drug and alcohol, but now we're also going to talk about drowsy driving. And we're only going to spend a moment on this topic, but really this is a topic we could spend all day on as well, because drowsy driving, not getting enough sleep at night, a lot of us take sleep for granted, not just teenagers, but you know, it can cause impairment just as if you were driving under the influence of alcohol if you don't get enough sleep. And in fact, teens need about 9.25 hours of sleep each night to function best, and most teens don't get enough. So what we know is that 41% of drivers in a AAA traffic culture survey said that they did report falling asleep at some point, at least once behind the wheel, which is alarming. But also what we know is when you're sleep deprived, it's like driving on 0.08 in Texas. That's the adult legal limit when it comes to blood alcohol content. So it's really important to talk to your teen, making sure they're getting enough sleep, making sure that they're getting that 9.25 hours. And it's hard to do as adults as well. Of course, we need 7 to 8 hours each night, but nonetheless, you know, you've got to do your best on that and try to get as much sleep as possible. Now, when it comes to seatbelts, it's 2021. You would think that we've come a long way with more people wearing seatbelts, but when it comes to younger drivers, that's not true. 65% of teens killed in traffic crashes were not wearing seatbelts. In fact, teens have the lowest seatbelt use of all drivers. Teen passengers are even less likely to buckle up than you or I. 14% of teen males don't wear a seatbelt, and about 9% of teen females don't either. Seatbelt use, of course, as we know, dramatically reduces your risk of death and injury when it comes to a crash by about 60%. So always buckle up. And you know, what will happen in a crash where a vehicle rolls and the occupant is not wearing a safety belt, what will happen is that the occupant is either ejected or they're crushed by the vehicle. And so it's a very important conversation when it comes to talking about teens and seatbelts, and that it's cooler to wear one than to be in a situation where you're severely injured or, of course, killed. Finally, we want to talk about graduated driver's licensing laws and what those are. Most states have them now. We call it a GDL, but these are laws set up to basically protect the teen and kind of give them a phase-by-phase step and slowly input them into the driving process. So we have a chart here that or an explainer of what that is. And one highly promising approach is the GDL. As I said, it's intended to be a step-by-step process. In Texas, we have the typical 3-stage GDL program. There's the learner stage, and then of course there's an intermediate stage, and then the final stage, which is where you get your driver's license unrestricted. So let's take a look and talk about how GDL helps when it comes to protecting your teen. So it applies only to new teen drivers between the ages of 15 and 18 years old here in Texas. It may vary a little bit by your state, but if you go to teendriving.aaa.com, you can look at your state's GDL laws. And again, we'll have that information for you in the handouts as well. But you can look up what the GDL is in your state. But here in Texas, and most of them follow a similar pattern here, it provides for a substantial amount of practice time behind the wheel. As I said, there's a learner's permit phase. And then of course, this is, you've got to complete your driver's education. You've got to pass here in Texas, the Department of Public Safety's written and vision test, and then passing that, of course, with at least a 70. And then in Texas, the minimum of 6 months where you cannot drive alone. It's like a learner's permit, as I said. And then when the child turns 16, then they have to complete 30 hours of supervised driving. They've got to complete the, here in Texas, a video or watch a 2-hour video behind the wheel test, and then of course pass the DPS behind the wheel driving test. And then they get their provisional license, which is, there's restrictions, but they can drive alone. But there are restrictions when it comes to time and passengers. So in Texas, it's no driving midnight to 5 a.m. unless licensed with a parent or a guardian. Of course, nothing good happens after midnight is what my mom always used to say. And then always only one non-family passenger under the age of 21 is allowed in the vehicle with the teen. And so a lot of parents aren't aware of these laws because these types of laws weren't around. They weren't around 20 years ago when I was learning how to drive. So, you know, a lot has changed. And so it's important for parents to really get to know what the laws are, become familiar with the laws surrounding teens, the driving process and the licensing process as your teen gets ready for that. And these are conversations you want to have well before the child gets the keys. And then at 18, of course, the restrictions are no electronic communication devices, and then of course 0 alcohol tolerance here in Texas until age 21. But talking to your teen, and I say more than once, and we're talking with Michelle the other day, and I added that in because I kind of laughed. I said, you know, when I became a teen, my mom just said, don't do anything stupid. You know, there wasn't much of a conversation there. And I think a lot of us growing up shared that same experience to some degree or another. There wasn't really a focus on this. But what we encourage parents to do is to have multiple conversations with your teens, periodically talking about it, bringing it up. And certainly that's not always easy to do, but we do have a handout in there, the Parent-Teen Driving Agreement, that kind of sets a guideline, if you will, or it's almost like a contract. It kind of walks you through that conversation with them. It's great to sit down together, read over it, and have them sign it. But you know, safe driving generally requires more than just following state laws. It takes time to review this agreement together, discuss expectations, rules, responsibilities, and consequences, and then again, have your team sign the agreement for accountability and review it periodically. It may not be something they want to do, but it can go a long way for peace of mind as a parent, as well as keeping your child safe and making sure that they understand what the rules and laws are in your state. And again, you can go to teendriving.aaa.com and find out the Parent-Teen Driving Agreement for your state. We also have one in the handouts for some states. And then, of course, you can also look up the GDL laws. So here's some of those other resources. We have the Parent-Teen Driving Agreement, and this is, of course, by your state. The AAA Teen Driving Resources is teendriving.aaa.com. There's also the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety. So a lot of studies that we didn't mention here today are on the website there, AAAfoundation.org. This is our foundation, our research arm. For AAA, of course, our goal is to prevent traffic deaths and injuries, and the foundation does incredible work at working with not only the doctors and experts within the foundation, but also with other traffic safety organizations and coalitions across the United States to develop this research. And so there's some really great studies. If you have time, that's a great resource. And then the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, of course, they're doing for the government a lot of different studies when it comes to young drivers, and they have a lot of great information and resources for parents. And of course, the National Safety Council as well. So nsc.org, also a great place to go. And then if you have questions and you want to reach me directly, I do have my email address. It's armbruster.daniel@aaa-texas.com. Again, I want to remind you, April is Distracted Driving Awareness Month, so please share this content with your loved ones. If you know someone who is they have a driver or someone who's going to be driving in the next few years, it's always okay to start this conversation early, because certainly you know, it will be here before you know it. So Michelle, I'll send it back over to you now.
I mean, amen. That does come before you know it. I'm flashing pictures of my teen that was a baby, and then now all of a sudden she's 16 with flashing, you know, permit at me. So yes, it goes fast. Thank you so much for all that knowledge and information, and getting us really thinking deeply about how we can keep our teens safe today. We have questions for you, and I'm sure we'll have a couple more come in as we get started here.
All right.
So our first important question is, and I'll mention something here first, but then you expand on it. Is there an upcoming webinar, or do you know any resources for driving teens to know their rights if they are pulled over? This is a very important source of anxiety for African American parents of teens that drive or passengers in cars. And I will say I have seen a really great presentation by the Child Mind Institute they're doing some live Facebook sessions. This was a little ways back, but there was a presentation on this topic that was exceptional. Do you know of other places where folks could go?
Yes, so in the teendriving.aaa.com section, there is an entire section about being pulled over and how to handle that situation. You know, when I was young, I didn't know that I was supposed to put my hands on the wheel, you know, so that the officer could see my hands, you know, because it kind of helps explain what the officer is looking for, and then that way you can also, you know, react and know what to do and to keep everyone comfortable in that situation. And being pulled over is something that no one likes, but certainly something that if you do have a teen driver, it's very possible it could happen. And, you know, obviously also talking at home, having those conversations at home as a parent, you have more power than anyone or any organization over your child. So it's important to look at those resources and talk over them together.
Excellent point and great resource. Thanks for directing us there. Someone has asked if it's okay to share or get access to the video, the distracted driving video. Is it okay for us to share a link to that?
Please do. Yes, yes,
Okay,
please.
great.
Because I think when people see it, it certainly is alarming. Yeah.
I still have goosebumps actually from that video. And I've seen it a couple of times before. So you're right, this is very scary. So we'll add that link to the video in our follow-up correspondence with the audience that's live here with us today. So thanks for being willing to share that.
Yeah.
Okay, another important question. What are your thoughts on driver education classes? We have someone from Iowa that says Iowa has just proposed a new law to not have this as a requirement. Instead, have it be up to parents for, I guess, selecting the education or not. Do you think the classes and driving with an instructor are beneficial?
I think yes, and you know, but it's important to do your research. If you're looking for a driving school, do your research, go visit. Look at the classrooms, look at what the types of vehicles. Of course, during COVID, you might have to call ahead and schedule an appointment and whatnot. But look at talk with the instructors. You know, in Texas, we do have the option where parents can teach their child driver's ed, and they're given a handbook, and then they are required to pass certain tests. So, you know, it does give options to families who might not be able to afford driver's education school, as well as taking the teen, transporting them to and from class. So there are options there that it provides. Of course, getting it from someone else is also helpful. But I think even if your child is enrolled in driver's education, it should not take the place of the parent's role in this process.
I just had a teen friend tell me how helpful it was to, whether it's with your parent or an instructor, to go through the course prior to doing your testing several times, the actual course itself, to get your nerves situated before you have to go through that experience. But I hear what you're saying, to look for options and to look for what's affordable for your family. And I would say on top of that, get through that course like as many times as you can get your teen to do that, for sure.
Yeah, I remember when I was in the course, one of the things I was really bad at parallel parking, but getting on the highway and merging onto the highway was something that I know a lot of my friends at the time, that made them very nervous. So, you know, if you're talking with your teen and you don't feel like they are comfortable with that, it might be a good idea to go to a driving school and have an instructor where they can sit in the vehicle with them and coach them through that.
Yes, awesome. Okay, someone asked us if slides are available afterwards, as well as the recording. So I'll answer both of those. Yes, we tried to send a handout out before that has a PDF of all of the slides from today. So if you could check your junk folders, there's probably already some handouts in your email, including the slide deck. And then following tomorrow, late afternoon tomorrow, you will get a second email from us that includes the recording of today's presentation. And in between that, right after we close today, you will receive a survey. So our audience is so good about completing that survey and giving us feedback and helping us set the direction for the next webinar. So please don't stop doing that, because we read every word and we utilize it deeply. So survey right after, recording late tomorrow afternoon, and handouts should already be in your inbox, but you can also download them right here with us before we close today. If you want to do that real quickly, they're available here in the GoToWebinar system also. Let's see. Oh yes, we love this right here. A parent asks, should I watch this recording with my teen following, afterwards? And we say yes. I mean, I think it's exactly why we did it, right, Daniel? If you could sit down and watch this with your teen, that would be amazing.
That would be awesome. It's a lot of the material in this is similar to the material we use in the courses and classrooms where we teach teen drivers. So yes, and watch it multiple times. Go and look up some of the research together. But the more you can talk to your teen about driving and do it together and make it maybe an hour or two every week leading up to before they get their permit, I think that's a great thing to do, and it makes the parent probably feel a little more peace of mind, as well as the teen, because a lot of times we give teens a hard time for being invincible or thinking they're invincible, but certainly there's a lot of teens that are very nervous about driving and don't fully understand what they're getting into, and so it's important for both of you to talk about it together as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think it also warms them up to think about it can be very dangerous, and you want to do as much as you can to stay safe, but also it's not, sometimes they just are like, Mom, you're overboard, with everything, come on, but this sort of warms the platform to say, no, there's a lot that can happen on the road. I'm not just concerned about your driving, I'm also concerned that you're watching others who might be distracted. And so it kind of warms up the platform to say there's a lot going on out there, and this just isn't me being a worried mom. There's a lot that we all have to think about. And so this warms us up to sort of, okay, yeah, there's a lot. So let's think about it together, and then let's look at this contract together. And it's not just about what I say, or, there's a lot of organizations, Operation Parent, AAA have a lot to say about this. So let's open up the dialogue and really sit down and go deep, and then also look at the consequences. So I have some very clear expectations for how you're going to stay safe driving. And if you don't live up to those consequences or take them seriously, we already know what the consequences are going to be with our family on the other side of that. So that way, they can totally blame it on you. If their friends are in the car and not wearing their seatbelt, you got to put your seatbelt on. My mom won't let me drive again if you don't. So yeah. I'm comfortable with you blaming it all on me, but it just kind of, I hope, would open up the dialogue. And then you and I, Daniel, would feel like we both have lived out our mission. If a parent sits down and watches this with their teen, there is not anything better than that.
Yes,
right?
That and watching this this video, as well as going through that teen driving safety agreement together, that is a home run. Yeah.
That's good stuff. Absolutely. Okay, let me see real quick if we have any other questions, and then we'll have a couple of closing out. Okay, yep, we do have one more, maybe a couple more. Do the grades factor into getting to go through the GDL process?
Do the grades from passing the driver's exam? Yeah, so it's going to vary by state, but in Texas, you have to make a 70% on the exam before you can get your learner's permit and then go through the process of the licensing process.
Okay, super. And I know we had to take a piece of paper with us in Kentucky to show that the grades were at a place where they could even take the test, the permit test, which is what you were saying too. Okay, and then someone says thank you. My grandson is about to get his permit, as excited as we are, terrified. Where can I get a copy of the parent-teen driving agreement? Okay, great. You should have that in your email. Yep, you should have it in your email. You want to tell them where they could go on the website too, Daniel?
Yeah, so if it's in the email or teendriving.aaa.com, it's right there on that front page when you go. Just make sure that you select your state in the top corner. It is, I believe it's geofenced, so it should be able to tell where you're at. So it should automatically go to your state, but just double check that it is, whether you're in Texas or California or somewhere, that it's the state that you're in.
Okay, fantastic. So we have a thank you for being very informative and insightful from Atlanta.
Oh, wow, thank you.
Thanks, Atlanta. And then let's see here. Nikki, I think we've got it, unless you see a question in the queue that I might have missed.
Yeah, I think we've gone over the bulk of them that I'm seeing. So
Okay.
awesome.
All right, well, let's hit, well, thank you, Daniel, so much for your time and talents. We're gonna just real quickly go through some closing slides here. But again, we'll talk with you soon, and we'll keep in touch so we can keep these resources going to parents. We'd like to let you know about our 8th edition parent handbook. It is available at $11.99 up on our website. Just go to operationparent.org in the shop, and you could purchase one of those handbooks and read a bit more about how to keep your teen safe while driving. We also have a special offer. If you order 20% off of 100 handbooks or more. So if you're here with us today, I'm representing a school or a drug-free coalition, or you know of another large group that might benefit from the parent handbook, we would love to give you more information, get you some samples of the handbook. So just let us know if you are interested in that offer. Take a minute if you have time here at the closing of the webinar and go to operationparent.org. We always have our next available webinars up on the website. So we've got a rebroadcast coming up on May the 5th that we would love for you to join us for, as well as a live webinar on Tuesday, May 18th at 2 o'clock with Kara Starn. So mark your calendar and join us for that. This is how are children being trafficked without us noticing. We'd love for you to continue to follow us on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. Look us up there and stay in touch that way. And once again, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.